Liam, let's start with the transfer window. How pleased are you with the business the club's done?
Yeah, I think, look, on the face of it, pleased. I've learned in this role that you judge it, you judge it down, you judge it down the line. But I think at this point, you can only judge what you've done on the strategy that you set out in the first place. And that was, me and Graham spoke at the start about improving the experience in the squad, targeting a specific age profile between 27 and upwards really, and then targeting captains and promotion winners. I think you look across the team now, we've got 5 or 6 players that have won promotion at kind of different levels, and various people that have captained the team. So we feel like we're in a good spot. The window changes. You don't just set out a plan and tick things off as you go along. There's various challenges, things change, injuries, the start of the season. It all goes into the mix. But ultimately, as I sit here today, and as each day has gone on, you kind of look at the squad and think, yeah, we're pretty pleased with what we've done.
I want to ask you a couple of questions now, and almost to draw a line under things, because I think you probably know what's coming in this interview, and you came under a lot of criticism during and after the relegation. Did it hurt? Did that hurt you? Did you feel hurt? Were you upset by that criticism? Did you feel it was valid?
Look, the person who's most critical of me is myself. Do you know what I mean? I'm not. I didn't take any more hurt from anything anybody else said, other than how I felt driving home from Burton. So that's the starting point. I judge myself to a high standard. I'm in a privileged position, as I've said before. So, last season hurt, but I can't affect the past. I can only affect the future. And following some, honest and probably difficult conversations with the chairman, we've decided to draw a line under it and move on. And when we both looked at each other, we both had the fight and the determination to do something about it. And that's where we are. I think I have the privilege now of talking about it at this position when we've started the season relatively well. We've got through another transfer window, and we have to embrace the challenge of what's expected of us now, and that is to compete for promotion from this league. We've got to own that challenge, and that's what we're here to do.
Did you see that whole process of that period of time in your professional life as actually part of it's experience, isn't it? It's a learning process as well, because none of us can learn unless we maybe make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you'd be completely foolish not to take the learnings from it. I'd like to think that people look at what we've done and suggest that we have learnt from it. I think this transfer window is a good example of us tweaking things and making sure that we are competitive straight away. And that's the thing. I think I knew last season was going to be tough off the back of the players that we lost. Never did we anticipate that it would be as tough as it went. So yeah, absolutely. So it's all part of the learning. I've got to thank the people around me, thank the chairman for giving me that opportunity to learn. And there's other clubs, other people might have acted differently, and I wouldn't have had the chance to correct things. But I feel like I've been given that opportunity, and like I said, here we are, embracing the challenge that now we're a big club at this level, and there is expectation on us to deliver this season, and we have to.
And just one more on this, and then we can maybe talk about the process of finding players and whatnot, which I'm interested in. That conversation, when we spoke to the chairman after the relegation, he obviously said that you'd spoken to him, you'd offered your resignation, and Peter turned it down. That must have been probably the lowest point. After that, obviously, when you drew a line under it, when everything was done and dusted, it's just then looking towards the future. What was that moment like, though, that conversation? I'm not asking for the personal detail, but that must have been a difficult moment.
Yeah, look, like I said, we were all hurting at that point. The lowest point was driving home. The same as every supporter, thinking, what on earth have we just watched? How did that ball not go in? I'm not here to talk about last year. Like I said, I can't affect the past, but I can affect the future. We had some difficult conversations, but the ultimate thing was we looked at each other, and thankfully, I trusted the chairman, and he trusted me to do something about it. So, and look, I probably would say this, but I think that was the right decision, because the sporting director job is for the medium to long term. It's about continuing a strategy, and as long as he had trust and faith in me to deliver that, then yeah, absolutely we should have carried on. We were already going to face enough change. Relegation brings about huge challenges, so that I feel like there was already huge amounts of change on the horizon. So the fact that we could at least learn from the experience and kind of attack the recovery together was the most important thing.
What's it been like working with Graham? Because he's a very different character to Liam and to Mark. There's a steeliness, there's an experience, there's something behind the eyes, if you know what I mean, with Graham. It must be just a completely different experience.
Yeah, I mean, look, I personally I've worked for a lot of managers and worked alongside a lot of managers, ranging from Tony Pulis, Roy Hodgson, to now the managers we've had at MK Dons. So the most kind of relevant thing about Graham is that for every single situation we have found ourselves in, he has had an experience that relates to it. And that ranges from players finding themselves in transfer situations that they're experiencing for the first time. Well, Graham's been through it before. When you hear the situations of him kind of moving clubs up until being a senior pro, he's got really relevant experience to advise them and help them through it. And likewise, when we sat down with the chairman and discussed who we were going to appoint, it was about people that had won promotion, gone course and distance, and he's done that several times. So really enjoying it. I think he's embraced it, embraced the challenge of picking us up where we were, came into it with his eyes wide open, and I think has affected the mentality of the group. And we've started well. We've still loads to improve. I think everybody recognises that. So, but as I've been saying to people, we were so desperate to win games at the end of last season. We should never moan about winning a game at any point at the start of the season, because at the end of the season they all count for the same, don't they?
You talked about that recruiting experience and experience of promotion, and that's almost there to help eradicate the losing mentality, which can be infectious, not in a positive way, in a very negative way. That losing mentality can start to infect a squad, and the feeling was that maybe that happened.
Yeah, I think, as I said at numerous points last season, when you increase the numbers that you recruit in a summer, you're then playing with, and you're suspect to change of the culture, the mentality. When you have a consistent base, you're able to control certain elements, the culture and the mentality. And when the group that we put together a couple of years ago just kind of grasped a togetherness and a real eagerness to go and achieve something. The group last year, we never got to that point, and I don't think we built enough experiences of resilience to then get through the really difficult moments at the end of the season. Now we've targeted a specific age group of players. Alex Gilby went through an experience last year where they got over the line. He personally has built up a real bank of resilience now, and he's able to share that with all the other players. MJ Williams is the same. He went to Bolton and they charged a promotion in the second half of a League Two season. So those guys now are what I hope and what I'm seeing is that they're sharing those experiences, and that will rub off on our other younger players. And the hope is that you narrow the gap between what could happen in terms of best and worst case.
So the transfer, I'm just curious, the transfer window's done now until the next one. What do you do now? What's the process? I mean, I'm not saying you just go, right, I'll put my feet up. This is obviously ongoing every day. There's work to be done, but quick breather while now the transfer window's shut. What happens now?
Yeah, I mean, look, the first part between me and the recruitment team is to review it. So one of the first things I asked them to do was to pull off a list of all the strikers that had moved in the transfer window, because it felt like the striker position in particular was extremely difficult to recruit for. It seemed like everybody was searching for a striker. Everybody you spoke to was, we're just looking for that striker that kind of leads the line or score 20 goals. Of course they are.
Every transfer window though, isn't it?
Of course.
In all divisions.
But it just felt like it was even more, an even bigger search this time round, and perhaps there's a whole other conversation about the youth levels in England and are we producing that kind of player, because I'm not sure we are. But yeah, so there's a portion of review, but then we've got I think the guys have seen there's a a really exciting group of young players just kind of on the edge of the first team, so we need to make sure that they're appropriately challenged, so there might be some loan opportunities for them into the non-league. We've got various new members of staff that have started that I haven't had time to kind of build a relationship with, so there's a period of that. And then look, the recruitment process is absolutely relentless. I was back out at a game last night. Do you know what I mean? It's not you don't take time off in this game. You have to be you have to take every opportunity to cover every game you can, because our team's not massive and you never know the game when you're going to find something.
And it's really interesting, isn't it, the process of recruitment for a club like MK Dons, because there is not only this season, the short term is promotion, without a shadow of a doubt, that's the aim, but you're also wanting to build a squad that can then compete in League One with maybe some additions, and ultimately, if you're looking even further down the line, you're looking at players, younger players who can go all the way through the process to get to the Championship. I mean, there's lots of levels to this, aren't there?
Yeah, that's a really good point. If we find ourselves in League Two, we have to own our challenge that we should be competing for promotion this year, and we should take it all the way. If we're successful and we get to League One, we're then in a division where there will inevitably be a handful, if not more, clubs that spend a lot more money than us. So then our strategy has to be that we're trying to overachieve, and we do that by developing our own players, by having good young players, just as we have done the year that we finished third and the year that the club got to the Championship ultimately. So yeah, you are kind of discussing those type of levels all the time, but what we can't do at this stage is take our eyes off the short term, and that was in this window to build a squad that will compete for promotion, because a lot of the recruitment of young players had already taken place. We're not discarding those guys. I think some of the guys coming in will be good for them. And then there's players like Joe Tomlinson, that's 23, Nathan Harness is 23, that we do feel like can go on a journey with us for sure.
How much panic goes through your mind when there are deals coming right up to deadline? I mean, 2 deals that were announced after the 11 o'clock deadline. At what point does the panic set in?
Yeah,
does it at all?
I don't think panic's the right word. I would say I'm aware of it. I think you have a decision when you take it to deadline day. The risk of something going wrong increases, for sure. But for the striker position in particular, and a number of positions, because the window works in stages. Right at the start, you have the players that are out of contract. That is relatively easy to approach them, try and sell the project, sell what we're about, and they either jump on board or they don't. You've then got a middle period where people might be out, not in the plans of the club, so you can get them on a free transfer. Perhaps MJ was a sign of that ball, and we're going in a particular direction. MJ didn't think he was going to play as much, so he's interested in joining us on a transfer.
Is that like when they come in for pre-season, and that's where the
yeah.
says that, isn't it?
And then you go into the kind of middle and the end where the loans start coming out, and then you're trying to buy players, and that's where we were with the likes of Jack Payne, Joe Tomlinson, Ellis Harrison, even Anthony Stewart. So I knew we were going to do quite a lot of numbers late on. I don't like it going as late as it did. I think we submitted Ellis at 10 to 11, which was a lot closer than we'd anticipated. However, we did everything properly. We did a full medical on deadline day. If it was closer, we probably would have cut that down. But yeah, the last one got submitted at 10 to 11. So I used to work for a chairman who said we'll go to deadline day and find out what it really costs. And I don't particularly agree with that bit of advice, but on this occasion, that is what happened, and we went to deadline day to find out what Ellis would really cost.
And when it comes down to those moments, you also got to, at some point on that night, say, that one's gone, we've now got to move on and have to do it quickly. Yeah,
and that's the pressure that falls to me ultimately, is to say, right, there are, the hours are ticking away. And at some point, players have got to get on the road. They've got to get here. The agents, you've got to line up the personal terms. Those. If you get to a certain point, it's like a point of no return, really, where there isn't enough time to do a deal. So, yeah, by about the afternoon stage, I'd set kind of agents and people set these arbitrary deadlines and say, oh, you need to tell us by 10 o'clock, and there's only one deadline. So I say all these deadlines people set don't mean anything, but you do try and kind of move things on like that as it goes.
Graham said to us on Saturday that the timing of the deadline was a nightmare because it's right up to the point where they're playing a game. And I imagine that he was up in the hotel with the rest of the squad while leaving you back here to iron everything out. Is it difficult when you are building up in the build-up to a game, and when the head coach isn't here and you have to do everything on the phone rather than face-to-face, or is it that's just part of the process?
Yeah, it was interesting. We had a bit of a debate actually, because I prefer the window closing before the start of the season. Yeah. I think, like I said about dealing with those players that you're trying to buy from other clubs, it is much easier if they aren't currently playing or they haven't. They could score a lot of goals and make it extremely hard. So I preferred that. Graham likes the idea that you can see how the first few games go, but I think we both agree that the 11 p.m. deadline shouldn't be the day before a game for sure. I don't know why that happened. I don't think it's always happened. I can't remember.
Especially given that it was the first of the month, and you think
then
just end it on 31st, and on a Thursday, and that'd be done.
Yeah, it did feel quite bizarre. And then you've also got, for some clubs who would have signed on deadline day and then have their international game postponed, fans won't see those signings for another 2 weeks. So it just didn't feel quite right. But I didn't have much time to moan about that in the moment. You just got to get on with it.
Interesting you mentioned about the seeming lack of strikers. The fact that you did manage to find one in the form of Ellis Harrison, a player that's playing at a higher level. Have you found Milton Keynes Dons a relatively interesting prospect for players to want to come?
For sure.
Even in League Two?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think we undersold that. Probably the relegation hurt us all so much. Maybe we probably thought that was going to be a bigger problem than it was. We are still an extremely attractive proposition. The facilities, the club, the style, the expectation. I think what was really interesting is the amount of players that said to us, I want to come and earn a promotion. Some people were kind of referencing earlier points in their career where that was the most enjoyable point, and now they want to come and do it again. I think we've signed a lot of players from League One. I think over half of what we did, the players actually arrived from League One. So that's a really good sign, and I think we've put together a really competitive squad.